Okay. So thank you all for taking time this afternoon to discuss our annual demand response filings, which were submitted mid-November as part of our annual review process. This is Kate Overecker from the Office of Markets and Innovation. And in the room, we have
Michael Ngakota, CPS staff, Office of Markets Innovation.
Kat Carroll, Office of Markets and Innovation.
Robert Cully, Office of Markets and Innovation.
So I'm going to begin by briefly walking through some of the WebEx participation guidelines. All participants are muted on entry. Unless you're actively speaking. For those joining by phone, to mute and unmute, you can hit, I believe it's *6. So we have several presentations today. Following each presentation, we'll reserve 10 minutes approximately for open questions and discussion. Any time remaining after the final presentation will be carried forward, made available at the end for additional questions and revisit any earlier topics. Sorry. Questions may also be submitted to the chat feature, which allows us to capture questions clearly and ensures that all participants can view the question and respond. When submitting questions in the chat, if it's for a specific utility, please indicate which utility you have the question for, so it can be directed to the appropriate person. If we're unable to address any questions by the end of the meeting today, we'll capture what's either whatever's left over in chat or any other folks' questions, and we'll forward those to the utilities and get them back to the folks, the responses back. All presentations today will be made publicly available in our Department of Public Services document matter management system, along with each utility's presentation and a recording of the document of today's meeting. So going back kind of briefly to the agenda, we're going to begin with Central Hudson, move on to National Grid, then NYSEG RG&E, ONR, and then finish up with Con Edison. So before we begin, does anybody have any questions or concerns or? Nope. Okay. Silence is consent. So I'm going to start with Central Hudson. Hold on one second. Apologies. Okay. TJ, are you ready to start?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Just let me know. I'm sorry. Just let me know when you want to go to the next page.
Okay, sounds good. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm TJ Rizzo. I'm a senior program manager for Central Hudson for the non-wireless alternative program and the non-pipes alternative programs. Next slide, please. So here's a brief overview of this, our CSRP program. We have reservation payments that are based on kilowatt per month. And then also there's a performance aspect to that, which are both planned and unplanned. Planned is when the participants get enough time to plan accordingly, and then unplanned is more a quicker turnaround, and not to a little bit quicker than what we had anticipated and agreed to. As far as auto intern DLM, the RFP, we are planning our 6th solicitation, and we're planning to release that for Q1 of this year. Next slide, please. So here we have our basic requirements for our CSRP program. The customers are required to participate in 1 test event. However, if the first actual event happens before then there's no test event required. The events can be up to 4 hours, and our season is June 1st through September 30th. And participants must be available Monday through Friday, 12 a.m. to 8 p.m. Historically, we've seen 2 to 3 hour events, and it's typically in the afternoon hours between like 4 and 8 p.m. So that's typically when our events are. And we currently use the Central Hudson Customer Baseline Load, the CBL methodology, and more information for that can be found on our website. Next slide, please. So for 2025, our CSRP program, we dispatch events at 94% of our forecasted peak. This year, we had 24 participants, and we had enrolled 6,712 kW for relief capacity. And you'll see here how that goes against other years, and we hit a performance factor of 97%. Next slide, please. And here's just a little bit more deeper into the details about our actual events, when they occurred, what the enrolled KW are, the start time and end time, so how long the events were, how the performance was, and then also the performance factor there. Next slide, please. So for our residential battery program, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you taking questions now or later? I apologize for the interruption.
I can do whatever. It's up to Kate, I guess. What do you think is best, on the fly or at the end?
If possible, can we wait to the end? And that way everybody can just ask their questions at that point? I mean, at the end of your presentation, not the end of the total meeting.
Sure, but apologize for the interruption. Thank you.
Oh, no
No.
problem.
Thank you.
And if at all possible, please use the raise hand feature as well, so we can see when someone wants to ask a question and try to address them in an orderly fashion.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. So for the residential battery program, currently we have 944 batteries interconnected in our system, and that's as of November 2025. We are recommending launching a program, but when it's reasonably near cost effectiveness. And really the reason why we're waiting for that is because any future updates for avoided costs could make, any updates for the avoided costs could really make the inception date sooner. And if there's no updates, then it could be later. So it really depends on, what we're going to do with avoided costs in the future. Next slide, please. So here, there's really no updates from last year. This is just all of our tariff modifications to date, going back to 2016 through 2025. And again, there was nothing to mention here. Next slide, please. And to conclude our 2025 season, our CSRP continues to use existing marginal cost of service study numbers from 2016. Again, we had a 97% portfolio performance factor. And we're not making any tariff modifications. We don't currently have any proposed modifications for 2026. And that's it, Kate.
Thank you, DJ.
Thank you.
Question from Jay Goodman.
Okay. There's a question. Jay, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Kate.
Thanks.
This is Jay Goodman from multiple interveners. A couple questions first, and then I apologize if this was said at the beginning and I missed it, but will the presentations be shared with participants or provided through DMM?
Yes, so the presentations and a recording of today's meeting will be available publicly in DMM.
Thank you. I think of two questions. If I understood an earlier slide correctly, I think it showed that the performance during some events exceeded the enrolled kilowatts. Did I interpret that correctly?
Yes. So if you go back right here, yes.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So some of the earlier performance or some of the earlier events, we didn't quite get to our enrolled capacity. However, in the later events, we did surpass the performance of the enrolled capacity.
Can you explain how? I mean, just looking at it simply, I'd assume if there's, say, 6712 kilowatts enrolled, that would be the maximum kilowatt performance, but that's, clearly not thinking about that correctly.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm gonna have to look back into that. It's the exact reasons why. I know that Corey Schofield's on as well. I don't know if Corey, if you have any insights into that, but it's certainly something that we can look into and get back to everybody on.
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in a little bit. It's IJ, Corey Schofield, Central Hudson.
Hi, Corey.
It's not totally unusual where an aggregator will provide a conservative number that they're looking to ensure that they can hit. So it's not unusual for us historically to see performance factors above 100%.
Okay. That's helpful. Thanks, Corey. And the second question was, I think the slide where it talked about the number of events, I believe it said that the number of events had increased, and I'm just curious to know if you see a change in participation levels following an increase in events.
It's a great question.
More specifically, do you see a decrease in participation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's something that we're interested in monitoring for sure. It could happen. Jay, not sure if you're aware, but for Central Hudson, we historically we used to have a 97% threshold, where if we forecasted that we were going to hit within 97% of our forecasted peak, we would call an event. I think it was 2024. The related order there had lowered that threshold to 94. So, essentially it kind of opens up the gates there to increase the likelihood that we would call events. And sure enough, that's happened here. It seems very much, anecdotally here, it's very much within the realm of reasonableness, right? To have the 7 or 8 events here. Certainly, I think, fatigue and customer participation could get impacted if we had, a significantly higher number of events per year, but it's still a little new for us. So we're interested in kind of following along and see how that flushes out. I hope that answers it.
That does. That's helpful. Thank you.
And we have a question in the chat from Sean Kelly. If updated MCOS values ultimately get approved, what is the plan to make tariff updates based on those changes?
Or can I defer to you on that one too?
Sure. So, generally, I think if we had substantial increases to MCOS, so for instance, TJ had alluded here to the battery program for us. Right now, we don't have a terribly high MCOS system wide there, but a main driver there is kind of the consideration for the NYSO's ICAP demand curve reset, which is looking at the generation capacity value, which is multiple times over what we currently have. If something like that were to increase, it's likely that that we would have higher incentive levels to provide to customers, right? You're saying that there's a higher avoided value on the system, and so certainly tariff requirement, tariff updates and programmatic updates would come from something like that, and the cost effectiveness of something like a more expensive program like running the batteries. The battery program, it would more likely pass a BCA with smaller, battery volume, participation, et cetera, if that makes sense. Did that help? Or more into the tariffs?
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Next up, I see a hand from Aaron Breidenball. Aaron, go ahead and unmute if you haven't already.
That might help. Aaron Breidenbach from Sea Power. Thanks for this. I had a couple questions, but first I think I have a follow-up on Jay's question. I guess, we see the performance improve, which is good. I just wondered, did the company undertake any efforts, I guess between June and July that you want to claim credit for as having increased the performance factor? Or did it just kind of happen?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, there's some things that are going to be out of the company's control and some things certainly within the company's influence, right? And, sometimes on these earlier events, if say an aggregator misses a notice or somehow, for instance, a business wasn't prepared for it, what have you, this isn't the first time. This is pretty significant difference. Personally, I've seen this program for the past 5-6 years. Normally don't see that big of a gap in performance there, but it is an unusual where in the beginning, or you have a certain event where something goes wrong there. So there's always things that the company can try to do better, and one is to ensure that the communication and that it is flowing freely and that everybody understands what they're supposed to be doing in the program. And then there might be certain things out of your control, like the guy, if you will, who was supposed to pull the switch today didn't show up, or there was a stand-in and he wasn't familiar, and that company or something like that, that participant had poor performance and brought down the average, right? So.
Okay, thanks. The questions that I have, and this will probably get boring by the end of the meeting because I'm going to probably have the same question for just about everybody. First of all, at least one of the utilities, I think just one, National Grid, is proposing to move after having an extremely large number of events and concerns, I think, over fatigue and possible loss of participation, like Jay had suggested, is moving from a gross load trigger for CSRP to a net load. And of course, they have quite a lot of solar. So there's a significant difference between the two, and I think it would have cut the number of events by about half. I don't know what Central Hudson's solar portfolio looks like. Do you know if there is a significant difference really between the gross and the net load? And have you thought about doing the same thing that Grid has?
It's a good question. I don't have a good answer right now. We do have significant solar penetration in our territory. It's not something that we have really discussed recently, I think. So I wouldn't have probably as good a feedback now as say Grid would or some others maybe, but definitely something worth thinking about. And again, as I had mentioned, we're just starting to use a lower event threshold, so we could be driving to higher higher event counts in the future where we need to rethink things about a net versus gross trigger.
Okay, and the last question, it'll be shorter, I think, is because Sean already addressed the basic question, but just maybe to put a finer point on it. And I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but I think the fact that we have new MCOS numbers and approved methodology, and we have a staff proposal in the VEDR context to update the DRV and the LSRV values, it sort of begs the question of what implications those new numbers are going to have for the DLM programs. Because I frankly don't see why you would update the VETR numbers and not update the DLM numbers, especially when the two programs to a certain extent compete with one another. But you can't be in one without losing some value in the other, kind of thing. So I would encourage you guys to think about that. I think I got the answer, which is that you're not planning on changing or incorporating the MCOS values. Obviously, you didn't last year because we didn't have them, but going forward, and this is also going to be sort of a general question, so maybe we talk about it at the end. And it's also, I think, a question for staff is like, what are you guys planning on doing with this? But thanks for this. It's interesting, and pass on to the next person or the next utility.
Thank you.
I think we're going to take one more question from Robert, and then we'll move on to National Grid.
Yep, good afternoon. Thank you. Bob Warner from PSCG Long Island. A question goes back to the 900 battery storage systems that you've interconnected. From what I understand, that you don't have any plans to, at this time, develop a BYOB tariff program, either under direct load control or demand response. And the reason for that is the low participation expected in relation to the costs. If I'm correct in assuming that on Long Island in 2025, we've had some success with the BYOB program. So anytime you want to hear about our experiences, reach out anytime.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we appreciate it. You know, to be clear, we look forward to having this program. You know, obviously a primary consideration for us is cost effectiveness. And the point with the batteries is we haven't had the penetration, and we don't have the saturation of those batteries, and we don't have you know, a massive appointed value that really helps. Sorry, somebody's got their mic on the keyboard there. But yeah, basically we need our numbers to kind of come up in the batteries in a significant way to get scale, but we also need kind of a higher value there to avoid. So
understood. Thank you.
Yep, appreciate it.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, TJ. And if there are any other questions that people think of, remember we'll have some time saved at the end to go back and address them or address any in the chat that we may not have gotten to. So now we're going to move on to National Grid. Bring me a moment while I get the file. Okay, thanks. And Mike, will you be speaking on National Grid?
Okay, thanks. Yep, I'll be presenting for part of today. I'm actually going to pass to my colleague Jeff, though, to get us started.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jeff Breck, Program Manager at National Grid here for our electric demand response programs, along with Mike Smith. We can go to the next slide. We'll jump into our CSRP program. This is open to customers and aggregations that are able to commit over 50 kilowatts of curtailment capacity during the season. So for 2025, we, as was already mentioned, had a pretty significant number of events. We had 18 events. Our enrollment over 2024, we had 219 customers come in. There was a bit of a downtrend in enrollment. Overall enrollments, we were down about 15%, but the capacity grew by 30%. The downtrend was mostly kind of the smaller side of participating customers. that 50 to 150 kilowatt capacity. That's in part because there was in 2024 we saw a 45% increase in that cohort, and they reverted back to the mean we kind of seen over the 2020 2023 period. A lot of that decrease wasn't even just these some of these customers opted out for 2025, but a lot of them their commitments just dropped below that 50 to 100 range. So overall, 330.95 megawatts of curtailment capacity. We're still seeing a very strong trend with a few data center participants that actually drive the bulk of that capacity. As I mentioned before, 18 events over the season. We did raise our threshold around the 11th of July. So that by that point we already had had 7 events. So we moved from the flat 92%, or moved up to a flat megawatt threshold from the 92%. That flat threshold ended up being a little over 96%. And that eliminated some calls that might have happened over some in retrospect would have been milder days, but we still went on to have a dozen events after that. As you can see, the performance did, despite event fatigue, and then also just the issues that would arise with calculating baselines when there's just so many ineligible days due to the events. We were still pretty close to our 85% average participation percentage. And we did have 2 voluntary events or unplanned events on the 24th and 25th of July. Those were dispatched late just because the forecast changed outside the window that we would normally have called for advance notice. If you go to the next slide, please. For term DLM, 35 customers in various vintage years still participating through 2025. 29.1 megawatts of curtailment capacity. The customer count and capacity went down from 2024, but most of that was really just due to vintage year contracts that had expired at the end of 2024. A lot of those customers also did pivot back into CSRP once their vintage years expired. Term DLM and CRP are typically dispatched together, so same story with event frequency. Although the performance was a little bit worse, that's largely due to it on the CSRP side of things. The bulk of the capacity is really made up by a very small handful of customers. And those customers did participate at or over 100%, so that did pull up the percentage of the commitment delivered on the CSRP side. You can go to the next slide. Our 2026 RFP closed last February, and 2 contracts were awarded for a total of 12.6 megawatts. They'll begin participating this year. Our total for 2026 will be 29.15 megawatts in term DLM. That 12.65 megawatts is essentially going to be replacing 12 megawatts that will be going away due to the 2023 vintage year having now expired. Vintage year 2027, the RFP was issued just back in November. We're currently accepting bids through almost all of February of this year. And different for 2027, bidders will have the option to begin participation in 2027 or defer to 2028. hopefully giving them some more flexibility in terms of putting their portfolio together. Next slide, please. On the DLC side of things, our thermostat program is still the largest offering we have, although we did implement the battery program this year, which Mike will be getting into shortly. We increased our thermostat enrollment incentive back in May from $30 to $50, and that really seemed to boost our new enrollments. We had new enrollments had kind of flattened out in 2024, and they'd lagged behind prior years. And since May, we were averaging numbers that we were typically seeing a couple of years ago. We ended the year just under 30,000 enrolled thermostats, added on net about 3,000 over the course of the year. 16 total events, again, high event frequency. We didn't dispatch DLC every time there was a CSRP or term DLM event this season, to give customers a break on some of those days that were kind of borderline forecast-wise. But reduction per device, it stayed in line with the previous year. Participation overall was down slightly, about 4%. Again, this is probably due to event frequency and participation fatigue, and then especially through July, it was just so much hotter, so customers didn't participate for the full 3 hours of each event, and that's also a difference here on the DLC side, where the term DLM CSRP events, they have a 4-hour duration. The thermostat events are dispatched for 3 hours. And next slide, I think we'll get into the BYOB program, and Mike will pick it up here.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so beginning in the summer 2025, National Grid launched a Bring Your Own Battery program in response to the spring order. Really, right after we got the order, we commenced the process of sort of getting the program running. There was a lot to get done and get launched in the summer, finalizing program rules, securing contracts with device partners, terms, conditions, all those kind of things to get us ready to enroll. Ultimately, we were able to open enrollments to customers in early September. So we were able to open enrollments during the summer, which was our goal from the start. Unfortunately, maybe fortunately for all the customers who were in for the whole summer and other programs, there were no more events needed in September. So we weren't able to respond to any forecasted event needs. So we called a test event for the program to determine how customers would perform. At the time of the event, there were 23 participants, the average of about 125 kilowatts discharged across events, so just under 5.5 kilowatts per customer. And we had 100% participation rate. Every customer participated. Next slide, please. So as of January 5th, there were 44 customers enrolled, with a number, varying from one battery to several, depending on the customer. We have 3 participating OEMs at this time: Tesla, Enphase, SolarEdge. We have several more in progress, including the ones shown here, and hopefully more in earlier stages. So we're hoping to have many more OEMs underway by summer 2026. And I think for getting sort of a quick start and a late start, we had some steady growth to the program, and we anticipate this was going to continue. We've spent a lot of time marketing the program internally. We know that our OEM partners have done a great job marketing to their customers through email, in-app notification, push notifications, things like that, really helping to drive the program. We are going to continue and expand our collaboration with NYSERDA as they offer incentives for residential storage. We have a joint webinar with NYSERDA and several of the utilities planned for the end of January with NYSERDA's contractor network to help them understand the program and how they can help their customers enroll, which we hope will bear fruit in more enrollments as well. And again, as we add new OEMs, the pool of potential participants grows. And so I think, all these things kind of point toward continued growth and success in 2026. Next slide, please. So that's a summary of all the programs. And now we want to talk about some of the changes we're proposing for 2026. Yeah, as Aaron mentioned, the big one we're looking to address is forecasting. We saw this summer certainly a higher than expected number of events this summer, a higher number of events than we hoped to call, and certainly a higher number of events than we understand many participants are able to to keep up with, and so we understand the impacts of that in terms of customer satisfaction and ultimately their willingness to participate in future years. And so we felt it was very important to address this. Right out of the gate this summer, the forecasted and actual loads we were seeing through our load forecast were higher than expected. We were running, near threshold on days that where we weren't expecting to. We observed this pretty early on and actually tried to address it during the season. We, internally sort of decided we were going to increase our threshold from sort of where we were allowed to call, which was 6,304 megawatts this summer, up to 6,600 megawatts. Unfortunately, that didn't resolve the problem. We still called another 8 events at the higher threshold. So, ultimately just moving that threshold upward didn't solve the problem. And so, it led us to kind of think about how we can revise the process. And I think there are a lot of things that we're working on the forecasting side. I think the biggest one that we sort of called out is a switch from a gross load to a net load forecast using some analysis. A net load would have sort of resulted in closer to 9 events over the course of the summer versus 17 times we crossed the threshold using gross load. And talked a little bit in the report about gross load versus net load, but I invited someone from our forecasting team here to maybe help explain a little bit more why we think this is important to forecast accuracy going forward. So Joe, if you're on, would you mind just kind of explaining what we've talked about here? Joe, you're on mute. Camera's on.
How's that? Better.
Gotcha.
Okay. So basically what we're doing is the difference between gross and net. Net is what's actually metered. So if there's a lot of solar, the load is lower because of that. If there's a lot of other peak reducing programs running, the load is low. So net is what's actually metered. And that's actually what the threshold is set. So I'm part of the load forecasting and analytics group at Keyspan and Keyspan, that dates me, National Grid. So we do the day ahead forecasts. In the same department, we have the electric load long-term forecasting team. They set the thresholds, or they set these thresholds. So basically, when they set the threshold, it's based on that metered net number. So it's the lower number because of solar and other DERs. We also have a forecast with grosses where we have the net plus those PVs added back. And that's really for the operators so they know how much could be at risk if the DERs drop off for wind and so on, things like that. So we've, since day one with this program, we've always tracked the day ahead forecast, the hourly forecast, using the concept of gross. And if you go back 3, 4, 5 years ago, there wasn't much difference between gross and net because there wasn't a significant amount of solar and other DERs on the system. However, as we all know, with the proliferation of solar and things over the last year to 2 to 3, there's been a tremendous increase in those DERs such as solar. So now there's a bigger difference. The net versus the gross is deviating. So at National Grid, in the middle of the day, on a peak hot summer day, sunny day, there could be 500 or 600 megawatts of difference between the two, say at like 1 p.m., 2 p.m. When you get to the actual peak hour, like we usually peak, maybe 6 p.m., the sun's going down, so that difference drops to 200 or 300, but there's still a difference. So what we started doing this year is forecasting both the net and gross, and the proposal here is starting, well, this summer, to match up the threshold, like in this case, that's 6,304, the 6,600 to the net. And if we were to have that in place in 2025, per this graph, you would have only seen 9, versus the 17. So we think it's the right thing to do, and it makes a lot of sense. So I don't know if there's any questions on that.
Thanks, Joe. I think we'll hold all questions for the end, but I'm sure there'll be some questions for you. But yeah, thanks for jumping on and explaining that.
Great. Yep.
And then so last slide here, just the last proposed change. National Grid's proposing to open up a DLRP offering for summer 2026. This is a program that we've had since the inception of the programs, all the DLM programs, but we have not used since, I believe, 2018. But we've identified an area where we think that it can significantly benefit supporting an ongoing NWA effort in the new Crumbkill area of near Albany. This would be available to customers served by new Crumbkill and portions of adjoining stations to support a load constraint that is there, that is sort of in parallel being solved by an NWA project. But we believe that DLRP working in conjunction with that solution will sort of provide the best outcome, to that deferral project, and ultimately will be a productive use of the program. And so I think we're excited to offer this program again. And I think it's something that we are going to expand our thoughts on how we can use it to support other whether NWAs or just identified low constraint needs moving forward. I think it's a tool that's been in our toolbox, and we're sort of other factors are aligning to sort of allow us to use it more. And so that's it's our hope going forward is to sort of expand and open DLRP where appropriate. So that's the conclusion of our presentation. So happy to open it for questions.
Hi, I just have it's Mike Volz from PSCG. I just have a question for Jeff. The 1 kilowatt per device that you averaged, is that the average over the 3 hours, or is that at the peak hour?
That's the peak.
Okay. Yeah, we found we also do a 3-hour curtailment, but we find that the 3rd hour drops off significantly. We get about 0.7 kW at the 3rd hour. We get one, first 2 hours we're getting 1 kW, but 3rd hour drops off. So that's something we've observed over the years.
Yeah, we used to call the events in 4 hours, and that drop off was really just not worthwhile since it was generally well past the peak hour anyway. So we do look at the that participation percentage is more how much they're participating for the duration of the event, where otherwise we're just looking at the peak reduction.
Yeah, thanks. We also did the same thing. We went from 4 hours to 3 hours a couple of years ago. So yeah.
All right, we see a hand from Bob Borner.
Yeah, I did have a question, but that hand was left up from the last time. On your thermostat events, the DLC events, I assume it's 3 hours. What are those start and end times in relationship to the peak?
We do these ones were all they all happened from 4 to 7 p.m. Well, we did have one from 3 to 6 p.m. But we do try to target the expected peak with the start time hopefully being just before the peak hour.
So your peak is at what time?
I believe it was 5:15.
Okay.
Yeah, I can jump in. It varies year to year, and Joe maybe has better data. But yeah, generally 5 to 6 p.m. hour. Sometimes I think maybe last year I've seen the 6 to 7 p.m. hour. So yeah, I think when we call a 3-hour event, we're trying to kind of settle that peak and hit it with a middle hour, so that maybe preconditioning things aren't negatively impacting what ultimately becomes peak hour.
Yeah, we're just anecdotally, our peak hour seems to be getting later in the day.
Yeah, so Mike, yeah, so for when we do that gross load, it's like you said, 5, 6 p.m. It's kind of drifting later. When you do net, the load's ramping up as the sun's going down, so that could be 6 or 7 p.m.
Okay, I think that question has been addressed. I see a hand up from Aaron Breidenbach.
Yeah, hi again. And ask not for whom the bell tolls. Was that Rob? Because I think my question might be for you. I put it in the chat, but this question about gross versus net load, I don't really remember back when we were putting all these programs together that there was any discussion of that. But I might have missed it. Was there any, or was it just that there wasn't enough? I guess it's driven by solar, maybe enough of a difference between the gross and what would be the net to sort of roll it into the programs.
Yeah, I think that historically we haven't really had to make a significant distinction between gross and net. It's really kind of a new concept this year that there would be such a departure from one to the other. So you're not misremembering. It really wasn't a significant like highly specific design feature going back 10 years now, when we first went through the effort of expanding the CSRP and other programs statewide from the original Con Ed only iteration. So I think that this is something we need to keep our eye on as more of those weirding of the grid a little bit occurs with differences between that net and gross loads.
Yeah, I guess that sort of begs the question. I mean, apparently National Grid believes they need to get a tariff change in order to use the net load versus gross, because I understand they're going to make they have made that a part of their filing. But is that true? Like, is the guidance from the commission so specific that it either implicitly or somehow explicitly says you have to use gross, or is it something that perhaps the utilities have the discretion?
Essentially, if it's not in the tariff spelled out, if it is spelled out in the tariff, there's a lot less discretion. To the extent that, and I'm not looking at National Grid's tariff right in front of me, but to the extent that the tariff does not include a specification of whether that percentage will be calculated on a net or gross load basis, and I don't think it contains that level of specificity today, then the utilities would have somewhat more leeway to do things. Essentially, the way I think about it, the tariff is the contract between the utilities and its customers, and the utility needs to go by the contract. But
yeah, I would just quickly chime in, Aaron. Yeah, I agree with Rob, and we do not specify whether the forecasted, the 92% of the 95.5 is gross or net load, and so we don't believe we need a tariff change to implement that pivot. I think what we wanted to do was we knew that, and we talked to several folks, including yourself during the summer, that there was there were feelings about the number of events, and we wanted to make everyone aware that we shared those, and we're doing our diligence to address it and sort of highlight one of the plans to address it. So I don't think we need a tariff change. We are just sort of highlighting that we hope that we have perhaps solved one of what we found to be a flaw in the forecasting process for this coming summer.
Thanks, Mike. And yeah, we when we talked about this over the summer, I think it was maybe after June, but before July or something. But I think you had indicated then that you had made or were making, I forget on the timing, the increase in the threshold on the grounds that the language in the tariff basically says it can't be less than this, but it can be more. And so that, I think, was the basis for increasing it, but then we still got 7 or 8 more events even doing that. I'm presuming, since I haven't heard anything about it, that that's okay with staff, and that interpretation, to the extent the language reads kind of the same way in the other utilities tariffs, that other utilities would have the discretion to do the same thing. And the goal is just, I think everybody kind of realizes that 17 events is probably more than most people thought they signed up for, and you're probably going to see the effects of it next year when there's significantly less participation. I don't know, Central Hudson is the only one we heard from so far. It was like 8 or 9. That's probably a lot, but not as many a lot. So I guess I would just say, to all the utilities, be aware of that. But if you are planning on changing something or interpreting, your discretion differently, try to let us know ahead of time. I think Grid has done that by saying they're going to use a net versus gross. But I don't know that others might want to do the same thing to avoid the same result. Just let us know.
Hey, Aaron?
Yeah.
Sorry, we're just burning through quite a bit of time. Can we move on to the next question?
I'm done.
Okay, sorry for the the hard stop there. So we'll do questions from Mike Mager and Jay Goodman, and then I did get a couple of questions in on the chat. I think some of those have been addressed in some of the discussion we've had, but I want to get to the 2 hands raised first, and then hopefully we can follow back up with Julia Popova's question, and Sean Kelly asked about the MCOS as well. So, Mike?
Yeah, thanks. I'll be quick. It kind of touches on the last discussion to some extent, but there are a lot of events called, and while
Mike, I'm sorry, Mike, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if it's just me or others as well, but
can you hear me now?
very faintly.
Can you hear me now? Any better?
Yeah, I think let's just go with that. I think I turned myself up. I think I can hear you okay.
Okay, thanks. I'll be brief. There are a lot of events called, and while the amount of megawatts grew under the program, does the company have a concern about attrition before next summer due to the number of events called? And at what point do you think you might start losing participation if there's kind of too many events called?
Yeah, absolutely, it's a concern. And I think that's why we wanted to be so proactive in hopefully communicating to everyone that we were taking that seriously, and it already sort of made efforts to mitigate that going forward. I think we certainly will have attrition because of the number of events in 2025, and I'm hoping that we can minimize it by convincing folks that we've taken appropriate action to have it not happen again in 2026. And but yeah, certainly it is absolutely a concern, and that's why we were so adamant that we want to be proactive and kind of get that to you all, in advance of next summer.
Thank you.
And Jay, go ahead.
Thanks. This hopefully is just a quick follow-up to Mike's question. I think I heard in your response that the company would try to convince participants that you will have a different number of events next year. Could you elaborate on that? Like, what efforts do you think you could take that might successfully head off material project attrition to, between now and next summer to keep participation up?
Yeah, I'm not sure what else we can do between now and next summer, but I think from the end of summer, till the annual report was due, we took a pretty, candid look at the results of the gross forecast, compared it to the net forecast. I think we shared that the net forecast would have resulted in maybe 8 or 9 less events. So our commitment to switching to a net forecast, which we believe is more accurate, I hope communicates that hopefully that, had we had that in 2025, maybe we only would have had 8 or 9 events, and that will translate to next summer, that the same sort of reduction from the previous gross method. So I think that is the primary action we've taken. I think we'll certainly work in any other way we can to mitigate it. Obviously we ran the forecast in parallel. We have a lot of confidence in the net forecast, but we'll monitor it. If it's not working as intended, we'll be willing to be flexible, make a mid-season adjustment again, like we did this summer, as needed. We understand the impact of the number of events. We want to call when flexibility is needed. We don't want to call when flexibility is not needed. And so, I think that's this forecast switch is the big action, but certainly we'll continue to refine the process to make sure we get it right next summer and every summer.
Great. Just to be clear, my question was about communications to participating members. We don't need to discuss it now. We understand there's a time issue, but I would just ask the company to consider if there are communications to participants that would relay that information or other information to try to, again, avoid attrition. Would encourage you to consider that. Thanks.
Sure.
All right, so thanks for the discussion, everyone. If there are any questions that we are still remaining for National Grid, please put them in the chat. And again, we'll try to get back to the ones that we know are still outstanding in the chat there on the tail end, if we can. And again, if not, we will take any unanswered questions from chat that we get and try to get written answers to be submitted onto DMM. And with that, we will move up to NYSEG and RG&E.
Yep. Thanks, Rob. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, Kate. See a white. Okay, I see. You're gonna scroll down. Not sure if it's showing properly. All I see is a title on the bottom.
Yeah, it looks like you have to scroll, but I'm not seeing the first slide of the presentation.
Sorry, we're having a bit of technical difficulties where we're scrolling on our screen, but it's not showing the scroll on the WebEx there. Andrew, why don't you start talking and we'll keep playing around with it, and hopefully we can figure it out by the time this first slide's over.
Okay, sounds good. Yep. Hey all, I am Andrew Leisha. I am the NYSEG and RG&E Demand Response Program Manager, and I'll be speaking to CSRP, Auto Turn DLM, and Battery, and then we'll have Emily McKee, our Demand Response Energy Specialist, touch on BYOT. So for this year, as we all know, for CSRP, NYSEG, we had called 18 total events. That would include 15 planned events and 3 unplanned events. If you can see, we had about 9 events 9 of those 15 planned events and unplanned events in July. So July was a heavy month for event calling. You know, we used our 92% forecasted peak load as our event trigger for NYSEG. And then for RG&E, we had a total of 11 events, 9 planned and 2 unplanned. Again, that forecasted peak event hold threshold trigger was 94%. So again, you can see there's plenty of events, probably a little too much, and we just kept going with these events. So something that we'll have to take into consideration for 2026. I would say this was an outlier year. Our average events over the last at least 4 or 5 years was about 7 to 8 events for NYSEG and about 5 to 6 for RG&E. But as we all know, things change. Weather, we can't really predict as much, so we'll have to kind of adjust year by year. I'm just trying to see. Are we still on the, not program growth, but previous slide?
So, Andrew, I've got a quick hot fix for folks here on the WebEx. So we're kind of having an issue. This particular presentation is a PDF, which is good and bad. There's a kind of better participant controls for PDFs. So if you look at the top of your screen, if you have the same version of WebEx that I'm looking at, there's participants along the top, and then a thing that says viewing, NYSEG, RG&E, DLM stakeholder, et cetera, and some Zoom controls. You should be able to, well, unfortunately, each have to individually do this, but fit the view to the viewer screen, and then zoom in or out as needed. So we can control which PDF page it's on, but just the way that this particular file is laid out is a little funky. So apologies to everybody, but that's the best we got right now.
Okay,
and,
thanks, Rob.
Let me know if that's not working for folks, and we can try to brainstorm a different way.
Okay, yeah, I'm still on page 2. I think on WebEx it's on page 4. Awesome, now I see that changed. I just wanted to highlight lastly our, enrolled load relief for NYSEG and CSR, NYSEG and RG&E. As you can see, about 42,000 kW for NYSEG, about 7,405 for RG&E. For this year, we had our performance factor was about 98% on average for each event, which equates to about 41,965 kW for NYSEG. RG&E, our performance factor was 1.07, so on average, about 7,913 kW. And we're still waiting for NYSEG, we're still awaiting 1 meter for data validation. So that is not the true number. Might be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. And then page 3. Just showing program growth over the last 9 years. As you can see, 2025, NYSEG, its enrolled load decreased about 10% from last year, while RG&E saw about a 5% increase. And this is just, again, showing the last 9 years. So there's not too much to touch on other than maximum enrolled load was in 2020, and for NICEAG and RG&E was about in 2018. Next slide, please. So for term and auto, as you can see on the chart, since 2023, we've had no bids no bids, no interest in our auto DLM program. Back in 2025, we released a new RFP that included a fixed price. And so, unfortunately, we did get some interest, but nothing confirmed for the 2026 capability period. And so, for 2027 capability period, sorry. And so, with our newly released RFP from November of 2025, we actually included 3 new locations for auto DLM programs for NICEAG and 2 locations for RG&E. So hopefully with the expanded geographical locations and the fixed price, we'll get some more interest from this RFP. And next slide. And I'll let Emily take on the Smart Change Award.
Thanks, Andrew. So for our Smart Savings Rewards program, or our BYOT program, we called a lot more events this year compared to last year. NICEAG had 20 events, where last year we had 8. RG&E called 10 events, and last year we called 4, so more than double the amount of events this year compared to last. If you look at the little table there that shows kind of the breakdown of the event details, you'll notice that the events called on 6/23 for both NICEAG and RG&E had a significantly lower number of targeted thermostats. Those are outliers there because we found an issue where our Nest thermostats were not dispatchable because they were set up for heating events, but we caught that and the vendor was able to correct that right away. So we went back to calling events the next day and we're able to dispatch to all thermostats. So again, that one-off oddball event there at the beginning, that also throws off some of the notes there about the average number of reporting devices. If we exclude that outlying event for NICEAG, it was a little over 20,000 thermostats per event, and for RG&E, a little over 15,000 thermostats per event. And we did see that participation increased this year, even though we were calling significantly more events. So about a 5% increase in participation for NICEAG and a 7% increase for RG&E. We call events May 1st through September 30th, and we can call events for up to 4 hours, but we called 2-hour events this year. For all events, we did experiment a little with the pre-cool setting. Traditionally, we did a 3-degree pre-cool. Towards the end of the season, we played around with changing that to a 2-degree pre-cool and determined that it wasn't really an effective way to increase second hour load shed, but good, data collection for us. Another thing that happened towards the end of the season is we got our NICEAG program set up to be able to call dynamic load shaping events. So basically that is to avoid some of the peakiness that we see with snapback and things like that. So we can call longer events, dispatch different customers at different times. It's designed to reduce opt-out and just maintain customer comfort throughout the event. But we did not get to call any of the dynamic load shaping events because by the time we got that up and running, we were late enough in the season that we were no longer hitting our event calling threshold. So we're really looking forward to seeing what that does for us in 2026. And I think we can go to the next slide. As far as program growth, our total number of enrolled thermostats in each program does not look significantly different compared to last year, but we did actually have more average monthly enrollments, a lot of new enrollments coming in. However, we did kind of a cleanup this year of all of the enrollments. And just before the start of the season, we cleared out a lot of enrollments that were linked to close closed accounts and things like that. So that kind of took a hit to our program total, but made it so that we know everyone who is enrolled is a current and active customer, and we've got like a good batch. And then, of course, with the Nest to Renew home migration, we lost a little bit of customers in each program there, but not a huge impact. We didn't make any big changes to our incentives this year. We're still doing a $70 enrollment incentive in the form of an e-gift card and a $20 bill credit at the end of the season for any customer who participated in at least one full event. We are exploring doing an e-gift card for the seasonal incentive as well in the future, just to avoid some of the issues that we run into with bill credits, like driving call volume to the call center because customers want to know where to find it on their bill and things like that. So perhaps in 2026, we'll have made some changes to that seasonal incentive. And then we're going to kind of change up how we do some of our marketing for this program, just because with the online marketplace closing down, that has eliminated some of the potential program growth that we used to see from direct program, like pre-enrollments where you could purchase your thermostat and enroll at the point of sale. With that going away, we've got to get a little bit more creative as far as program growth and how to drive enrollments. And we can go to the next slide, please. I'll hand it back over to Andrew.
Thanks, Emily. So for Next Energy, we did launch our Energy Storage Solutions ESS program back in August of 2025. We have 3 eligible battery OEMs, Tesla, Enphase, and SolarEdge. And at this time, we are evaluating on adding additional OEMs into the program for the upcoming season. Just a quick run through of the program details. This is a summer program that runs May through September. We'll have up to 20 events, and these events could be up to 4 hours per event. And the eligibility requirements and the event trigger threshold are similar between NYSEG and RG&E. And as for enrollments, we have approximately 120 accepted or pending enrollments as of 1/6. These are processed on a rolling basis. The next slide, please. And as for requesting program modifications, this is more for awareness. Back in July, the companies NYSEG and RG&E submitted their gas demand response residential proposal to staff. This is going to be modeled after Electric Smart Savings Reward Program. We submitted a supplemental filing back in September 30th. And then pending approval, we'll begin work on program launch in areas that we are going to target for RG&E and NYSEG. So this is going to be not a service-wide program. It'll be more of a targeted launch for constrained areas within NYSEG and RG&E. And I think that's all we got.
We have just one question in the chat from Aaron Breidenbaugh. Are the Avangrid companies considering a fixed price term in auto like National Grid? And Aaron, feel free to ask the question yourself if you'd like.
Yeah, Aaron, we in our RFP last year we did have a fixed price in that document, and we are continuing with that as well.
But the last one you also didn't, was also 0 response?
Yes.
So even with that, it didn't, you didn't get any responses. Okay.
well, we did get interest, but we never, like, we were talking with companies, but we never received an actual bid.
Yeah.
And this was released back in end of January, so it was a late release. So maybe customers were still considering CSRP. So hopefully this time around, with a normal launch of November, we'll get some more interest in actual bids.
Hopefully. Thanks.
Yep.
Great stuff. Thank you, Andrew. If there's no other questions, we're gonna move on to Origin Rockland. Hold on one moment.
Just take a moment. Any other questions, feel free to send them in the chat, raise your hand. Since we don't have a queue right now, feel free to unmute and ask.
Do you have to unshare?
Okay, so we'll plan to move on to O&R as soon as we can get back to sharing with the other account. And yes, the slides and the recording will be shared on DMM a few days after this event.
All right, Des, we have Orange and Rockland up for you. Do you want to begin?
Thank you, Kate. Hello, everyone. My name is Desmond Ofori, and I'm the program administrator for our demand response program here at Orange and Rockland. And I am happy to talk to you guys, to speak to you guys regarding the progress of our demand response program for the 2025 capability period. I will be talking to you guys and give you guys a brief overview of all the programs of the progress that we are making, and then dive a little bit into more details regarding the individual programs, and then talk to and then speak on any tariff changes that we will have. Next slide, please. For the 2025 capability period, for our commercial programs, we saw an increase in megawatt enrollments, although there was a decrease in the program participation. The decrease in program participation was largely due to small business customers that are closing out, like mostly stores and shops, like the Targets and Walmarts, the Family Dollars and things of that nature. So we had a large amount of customers that did drop out of the program from there, but then we also had some large customers that also joined the program and did also help the program increase our megawatt enrollments. For the CSRP and DLRP program, we saw a decrease in the performance factor, which was due to new direct participants. It's lack of participation from new direct participants, and we have discussions of increasing our educational outreach to get these new participants understanding the importance of our demand response program to get them to perform next year. As for BYOT, the program, it continued to see continuous growth year over year. Last year we did call 5 events, two events for both CSRP and our BYOT event, and then 1 DLRP event. And when we ran our numbers throughout our BCA, they all realized a value greater than 1. Next slide, please. as for our commercial for our CSRP program, we had as explained before, we had a slight decrease in participation due to those customers, due to those small business customers that did unenroll from the program due to closure. And but then we did realize a slight increase in the enrollment due to these direct participants, large commercial buildings joining the program and increasing our portfolio. Every year we always have the same customers that do reach out to us to try to join our CSRP program with via diesel, but then we have reached our 20% capacity and therefore cannot be able to admit them into the program. We did call 2 events last year for our CSRP program on June 23rd and the 24th. We did not call any event on the NICA peak day because our system, our overall capacity, our overall threshold was not reached. We were about 88%, and our threshold was about 92%, and therefore we weren't inclined to call any events on those peak days. And then as far as the increase in megawatt enrollments, as explained in the overview, we had new direct participants join the program. We also had, and those new direct participants were mostly large commercial customers. And then we also had some customers that increased their pledge as well, especially with our DLRP program, which we will dive into next. Next slide, please. For our DLRP program, also similar customers that enrolled in our CSRP program enrolled in our DLRP program, so 256 customers, and we realized enrollment of 15.5 megawatts compared to 13.9, that which was a significant increase compared to what we've had, the decrease that we've had since COVID. And we did call on 1 event on the 25th of June and realized a performance factor of 79%, also due to similar reasons with the CSRP events. Next slide, please. For our BYOT event, for our BYOT program, we continue to see continuous growth. This year, we are at 6,600 participants. We average them just like the other utilities at 1 kW per customer. So right now we are about 6.6 megawatts for 2025. We did call 2 events simultaneously with our CSRP events on June 23rd and June 24th, and realized an average reduction of 5.2 megawatts, which is 78% of our overall portfolio for our BYOT program. Now we continue to market our thermostat program through my ORU store, which is our marketplace. Last year we realized approximately 250 participants through the marketplace, and it's for the ones that don't know about our marketplace, it's where you can enroll. You can purchase a thermostat on our platform and then enroll right away into our demand response program, and then we allow you 30 days to be able to install the thermostats and have it appear online for us to be able to toggle with it during demand response events. This has been something that customers have gone for and has increased our portfolio. Next slide, please. As far as our residential storage program goes, it is fairly similar to the rest of the utilities. The most important information here is we are going to be launching our program the first week of February. We are still waiting on Tesla to conclude their QAs, after which Energy Hub will also need a couple of more weeks to conclude their QAs as well. And the tentative date is the week of February 15th. So we currently don't have any enrollments in the program. Next slide, please. For our term and auto DLM program, we did not receive any bids for the 2025 and 2026 capability periods. We have also modified our tariffs as well as our RFPs to fixed price as well, and still have not received any bids. We did we did release our RFP December 30th of 2025, and expect the deadline for us to expect responses is February 20th of 2026, and with awards going out March 30th, with contract executions on June 1st. Next slide, please. We did not propose any tariff change for the 2025 period, and therefore nothing really to say here. And that concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Is there Desmond? Oh my God, I'm sorry. Jeez. I believe there are some questions.
Yeah, we got Aaron, your hand is up.
Yeah, just real quickly, because I wasn't sure what I heard. Did you say that you didn't hit the CSRP threshold? I thought you said 80%, and I'm just like, how could that possibly happen given what happened everywhere else upstate?
No, we were within 88%. 88% of our overall capacity. We monitored it.
No, it was a performance number you're talking about. Like how well you did, not the hitting the threshold for dispatch.
For how well we did for the CSR for CSRP events. The reason being behind we had new direct participants that did not participate well within our program, and planned on bolstering our outreach program to help educate them, understand the importance of the program.
Okay, I'm sorry, I did mishear you. I thought you were talking about not hitting the dispatch threshold for it, and that you might have, it was 80% or something, but I misheard you, so thanks.
Of course.
Aaron, I think I got a different thing. I think you were right. Desmond, let me know if I'm wrong. Well, what I had heard is that ONR did not dispatch the CSRP on the NICA peak day because ONR's internal system peak was at 88%, right, lower than the 92% threshold needed to call a CSRP event on that day. Is that correct?
Yes, that is also correct. Yeah, I did mention that. I believe even NISO did call an event that day. Most utilities did call events that day. But we did monitor our system forecast, and we're not inclined to call any events on that day.
Thank you both.
Of course.
Bob Borner?
Yep, Desmond, thanks for that presentation. Question on your battery storage, the proposed program you're setting up with Energy Hub, the Tesla systems that you had said that you're going to use the telemetry to gather data. My question is your load relief going to be based on the inverter data, or are you doing the baseline methodology on the collected inverter data? Excuse me, the meter data.
No, it's going to be based on the telemetry, but it's going to be pretty much the KW delivered for per the year. that is how we're going to use to calculate the performance.
Okay, yeah, we have similar direct metering. Yep, thank you.
Of course.
Question to Desmond from Julia Popova. If the CSRP event threshold is based on net load forecast?
No, it's pretty much based off of our overall system forecast. I will have to further look into that and get back to you. But that is what we pretty much base it on.
Yeah, I think, Desmond, that was getting to the net versus gross load discussion from,
Yep.
centering on National Grid.
Yep. Yep. I believe ours is the gross as well. That we've been using.
It's fairly striking, I think, just kind of thinking out loud here, how some of the similar weather across the state has really translated to some very different number of events. I think we've seen this sort of thing happen in the past, and there does seem to be major distinction between the number of events called at larger footprint utilities versus smaller ones. Just lots of new things to learn every year. Any other questions for ONR? Looking for hands raised. Feel free to come off of mute since we don't have a queue, or put it in the chat. All right, we will get Con Ed's, right? Presentation loaded up and hand it on over to them.
Thanks, Rob. And while you're loading it up, I'm Alex Putliki. I'm the section manager for demand response at Con Ed. So thanks. So our agenda, we're going to do a program summary, review the individual events, the individual programs, tariff changes for next year, and a look ahead, mostly focused on our marketing strategies for 2026. So marketing efforts in 2025 resulted in 12,000 new enrollments. However, we saw a decline in enrolled load relief capacity, and that was primarily driven by the CSRP and DLRP programs. You see growth is driven mostly by residential customers and front of the meter energy storage. A lot of the decrease was driven by regulations that hit our territory, restricting older fossil fuel generation participation in commercial programs. You'll see here also a decline in BYOT load relief, and that's just driven mostly by lower calculated performance of those resources. Next slide. This just briefly summarizes what we did to try and drive growth in our programs in 2025. We had a robust marketing strategy. It involved emailing all customers, direct mailers, postcards. We had on-billing messaging to all customers. We also did some paid social media and flyers at events and bookmarks in libraries. So we attended quite a few events in New York. And we did see some positive results from this strategy. I mentioned the 12,000 new enrollments for 2025. We also saw a higher retention rate than we've seen in previous years. Typically, this was in the 70s. So I think it really says something about our strategy here, as well as the structure of our programs. Next slide. So we saw modest reductions in the actual load relief during events.
This was proportional to reduction in enrollments. I mentioned the generators, the enrolling, but I have a summary below that kind of hits on the key drivers for the changes that we see across our programs. So 8 megawatts of growth in from front of the meter batteries, 34 megawatts of growth from new participants. That excludes the batteries. 54 megawatts of lost load relief from the generator regulations, and an 18 megawatt reduction from returning customers due to decreased performance. Next slide. So you saw it across all of the utilities. 2025 was an interesting summer. We dispatched a record number of events. Our system load exceeded pre-COVID levels. We saw back-to-back peak shaving events, so essentially long elongated heat waves. But we did have moderate temperature leading up to those events. And in this case, we saw an increased frequency from NISO SCR dispatches, and a lot of those impacted both our baseline as well as being called in parallel to our events on the same day. And in our territory, a lot of our resources are also co-enrolled in the NISO SCR, so that certainly impacts how they're able to perform in our programs. Next slide. So this slide touches on the new regulations in our territory. So this NYCRR Part 222 has always existed, but new terms in this law went into effect this year, creating more stringent emissions regulations on fossil fuels and prevented many of existing resources from participating in 2025. We saw 62 megawatts of generation drop off, as well as 13 megawatts of co-located curtailment. So that's on the enrollment side. On the performance side, that resulted in 54 megawatts dropping off of performed load relief. Next slide. This slide summarizes our CSRP performance across all of our call windows. We saw increased performance as compared to previous year. This was driven primarily by increased weather adjustments. On the DLRP side, we saw a decrease, and this was likely caused by fatigue and prolonged heat waves. For DLRP in particular, a lot of the events were being called in certain networks back to back, and so it certainly drove fatigue there. Next slide. This slide summarizes the difference in cost from 2024 to 2025. CSRP costs jump primarily by slightly higher performance factors, but hitting a threshold in which our reservation payments jump. So after 5 CSRP events, the reservation payment jumps and the performance payment jumps. And so you're going to have increased costs associated with that program after hitting that threshold. Next slide. For Rider AC, which is our DLM program, we dispatched 13 events. So it was 9 term DLM events and 3 auto DLM events. The summary below looks at the enrollments for 2025 and the performance summary across both of those programs. In general, we see quite high performance across these programs, and in particular in auto DLM, we typically overperform against their pledge, and that's primarily driven by penalties in those programs. Next slide. This chart summarizes some of the data on the last chart, and it really depicts the performance across these programs on the dispatch days, so you can see how weather fatigue was a factor. It just gives you a pretty good understanding of how these programs performed, as well as comparing them against CSRP and DLRP. Next slide. So 2025's DLM procurement cycle resulted in 32 megawatts of load relief contracted for 2026 and the 2027 summer periods. We continue to see strong interest in these programs. And what we've seen typically is term DLM. We in the last year, we split our RFP into 2 vintage years, one at 18 months and the other at 30. And we continue to see term DLM much stronger interest in the closer year, and auto DLM much stronger interest in the second of the 2 vintage years. Just let you guys digest this before we go to the next slide. All right. And this slide summarizes our BYOT program. This year, much like some of the other utilities have done, we went through and removed inactive participants from our BYOT program. I think that you saw it on our first slide, it drove some of the reduction in the population, and we made up for that with some new program participants here. Worth noting, we're selecting a new implementation contractor for 2026. We're going through that process now. As a look ahead, that may impact program costs in the coming year. Next slide. In talking through tariff changes, we petitioned last year for these changes, and we're putting them into effect. We put them into effect in the current year, and we'll continue to see those into 2026. For 2026, with our annual report, we didn't propose any changes, but through our rate case, we did make some modifications to the tariff on Rider T. And it's mostly language around our metering and simplifying and eliminating references to legacy meters. Given that our territory is AMI across the board, that older language wasn't necessary anymore. Next slide. We did also propose a new Bring Your Own Battery program. This will sit within our direct load control section of our tariff, so similar to BYOT. We do expect the Commission's response early this year, and once that order is in place, this table below summarizes the timeline in which we will look to stand up this program for the 2026 capability period. Next slide. So this slide is really a look ahead to 2026 and some of our strategies to drive growth in our programs. We have a robust marketing plan for the first half of the year. And I think a big difference from what we've seen in past years here is doing far more targeted marketing, making sure that our marketing really resonates with each of the segments within our territory. We're also looking to collaborate with the aggregator community to really drive new enrollments. And so that effort's underway. That is the end of our presentation. Questions?
So we have 2 questions in the chat, one from Sean Kelly at Advanced Energy United. If updated MCOS values ultimately get approved, what is the plan to make tariff or program updates based on these changes?
It is something that we're looking at as a team now. So I cannot comment on it before those go into effect, but they will certainly affect our programs. Our programs are based on the 2025 MCOS study, and so the changes are different. The proposed changes are different than our existing MCOS and would likely impact our programs across the board.
Thank you. And then we have a question from Aaron Breidenbaugh. What is co-located curtailment?
So a facility or building that has a generator, but also performs load reductions. So co-located is same facility, same customer, being able to provide load relief both through generation and curtailment.
When you lost the generator, you lost the curtailment as well.
Correct. They opted not to re-enroll with their curtailment pledge.
Okay. And is it safe to assume, I mean, I would guess that individual generators are either in or out as a result of the changes to 222. So you just lost the entire generator. There wasn't like a derating, or have you seen people like trying to upgrade them to meet the new requirements? Or I don't know, just looking for a little more.
Yeah. So correct. The generator is either in or out. There's no derate. I don't have full visibility to the generator population in New York. I have spoken with a few customers who were discussing doing upgrades to their generator or wholesale replacements. And I know in one or two cases they waived the regulation due to some of the upgrades that they had done to their unit and recent maintenance on it. But that's between them and the regulating authority. But I think it bought them an extra year or two of performance in our programs. So, Aaron, I think to answer your question, generators in or out. Each customer is going to do a business evaluation on the cost of upgrades against the revenue that they can generate from remaining in these programs. And if it crosses that threshold, they'll likely do it. Otherwise, this is no longer a viable financial opportunity for them.
I don't want to hog it, but if nobody else has any other questions, I had a couple other questions.
Aaron, we got one more from Jay Goodman, and then we'll come back to you, okay?
Perfect.
Cool. Jay?
Thanks, Rob. So the question is, if I understood correctly from earlier in the presentation, the payments in the CSRP increase after 5 events, if that's correct, wondering, one, do you see improved performance after the payment increases? And do you have any information, anecdotal or otherwise, as to whether that increase might help to stem off some attrition in years where there are a greater number of events?
So Jay, I don't have the data in front of me, so I'll speak more broadly rather than the specifics of 2025. It is a financial kicker to help retain customers both in the long run, but also through the course of the season. My understanding is that does help keep them engaged and stem fatigue, and I believe in particular with larger, more sophisticated customers. But outside of that, I can't speak to the data for 2025. Can certainly get back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Aaron, you had another question, bud?
Yeah, unless somebody else, if somebody else came in, I'll let them go first. I just can't tell.
We don't see any more hands, so Aaron, go ahead.
All right. So same sort of question, and we chatted about this a few weeks ago, the net gross issue for CSRP. Trigger, have you had any time to think about that? And I think I had asked you at the time, like, how much solar do you guys have? Like, is there much of a difference? I don't know if you had a chance to plumb the depths of that question at all.
Aaron, I appreciate the question and revisiting it in this forum. I don't have an answer from the last time we chatted on this. I do want to bring it to our forecasting team. I've started discussions with them, but I do want to bring it to them to evaluate more deeply whether there's an opportunity there for that in our territory.
Right. And it sounds like from the previous couple of colloquies we had that unless your tariff otherwise stipulates that you have to use gross, you may very well have the flexibility to use net. Just let us know ahead of time before the season if you can. But actually, if we were surprised by it, we'd be pleasantly surprised. So I guess go ahead and do it without letting us know. The other thing, and it's sort of mixing proceedings, but as you know, the company, your company, Con Ed, is under the gun on a pretty short fuse to come up with, what are we going to do given the shortage situations, lack of Empire Wind, what happens if Chippy doesn't come in? There's a whole proceeding that the commission's asked for you on that. Is your team like part of that? Because I mean, there's not much you can do on a short fuse other than demand response. And one specific idea, sort of back to the question of Part 222, is, we used to, back in the deep dark days, NYSERDA provided incentives for people to clean up their backup generators. I don't think anybody's doing that anymore, but that might be, a way of getting, you already know how many megawatts you might potentially get back. Probably wouldn't happen quickly, but cleaning up an old generator may be faster than, certainly building a big wholesale generator.
Aaron, I'm going to let my department manager, Demetris Vansis, take the question. We are involved, but I'll let him speak to the details.
Hey, Aaron. Good afternoon. This is Demetris.
Hey, Demetris.
Yeah, really good question. For anyone who may not be aware, Con Edison was, instructed in a recent PSC order to, develop a reliability contingency plan associated with some transmission reliability constraints in our system to be filed next June. So as part of that order, Aaron, as you probably saw, if you've read, we've been instructed to, quote, leave no stone unturned in developing our contingency plan. So we're doing a lot of thinking internally, and we are also going to reach out to the market to ask for ideas and suggestions on, solutions that could help alleviate the need. There's a request for information, an RFI that we will issue later this month, open to everyone and anyone who has really good ideas like yours about what we can use in our contingency plan. So really encouraging you and everyone else who may have a good idea on how we can use DR or anything else really to support transmission reliability in Zone J in New York City to respond to that RFI. And we will take all the good ideas and evaluate them, and we're hoping to come out with a strong portfolio of solutions as part of our plan next June.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, so another idea is like, there is some price response effect. So as usual, like if you pay more, you'll probably get more. So that's always a popular suggestion.
Yeah.
But it leads me back to you don't even necessarily need to pay more and hurt the benefit cost analysis and this goes back to the issue of the MCOS studies and reflecting those, and prompts me to ask this question, I guess, of all the utilities, but certainly yourselves and probably of Rob and others at staff. Like, my recollection is that the conversion of marginal cost of service rates into the payment rates for DLM programs is maybe more an art than a science, or witchcraft might not be the wrong word either. Like, if you wanted to, like how hard would it be to calculate what new numbers might be? I realize the utilities don't even necessarily agree with staff's approach, at least in the Veeder case, but like, is this something that we could do, or are we going to have to like bring people back from retirement to figure out how to calculate the payment rates using new MCOS numbers? That's what I get for saying a number of people can answer, then nobody will. But so I'll ask you, Con Ed folk, and then I guess I'd ask Rob what he thinks about it.
So let me maybe sneak in first, because I think that the rest is perhaps a little more speculative than anything else. At least in my view, calculation of new numbers that should result in a cost-effective program is not something that I view as, at least it's not a black magic. It's
white magic.
But I do think that we do need to consider, you know, we have a demand response program versus a value stack compensation mechanism, and that we do as staff see a distinction between the main purpose of one or the other. And in all of our incentive programs, we're trying to get the most bang for the buck, the best response to a price at the lowest cost to customers possible, whereas Veeder compensation mechanism is really more best matching those things kind of without necessarily a trying to draw that distinction there between the compensation mechanism and the incentive program. So I think it's something that we are going to have to think through, and the calculus on that potentially differs between the value stack and the demand response programs, although they are rhyming at worst.
Sorry, what was that word? At worst?
Rhyming to relating.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
I
by
think
the
with
way,
that
if it's going to result
we're
in
at
lower
time.
payment rates, you don't need to do it.
Oh, 3:30.
Am I right? 3 o'clock?
Okay. Yeah, we are at time, right? So we had it for 2 hours?
No, it's 2.5. I see 2.5
I thought it was 3:30.
Oh, boy. All right. So we do have an extra half hour. I saw one more question from the chat from earlier that we did not address at the time, from Julia Popova. And this was for National Grid. And the question was, could you please explain if using the net load threshold, would that result in events that are dispatched later in the day, for example, after 5 p.m.?
Hi, Julia, it's Mike. Unfortunately, I think Joe had to drop, but we talked a little bit about this. I think the answer is it depends on the day and the peak. Often we're seeing 5 to 6 p.m., 6 to 7 p.m. peaks, even with gross load. Sometimes with net load, that spills into 7 to 8 p.m. hour. I don't think it would mean events, starting at 7 p.m. or anything like that, but we may move to less 3 to 7 p.m. events, more 4 to 8 p.m. events, possibly even needing 5 to 9 p.m. events. And that's been the trend of our peak, even with gross, since, I started doing this in 2017. So that's been the trend in general. And I think net, sort of only reinforces that.
Bill, you've got your hand raised, Bill Acker.
Yes, thanks, Rob. And this is a question back for Con Ed, and probably for Demetrius, but building a little bit on Aaron's questions with regard to the reliability order that you got folks are working on. I'm curious about your thoughts with regard to utilizing the existing pricing structures for each of these kinds of programs, and developing the response rates you think you can get to meet the shortfalls that were identified by the ISO and for your own study. Versus the approach of looking at going up to the expected levels of the transmission upgrades that would be required to meet those. We usually price programs based on averages, broad averages, MCOSAs, and things like that. And frequently, when we have these reliability needs that are particular, like the ones that are identified in the STAR report, they end up being priced quite a bit or cost quite a bit higher. So I'm curious about your thoughts for right now about that approach, and how you might be thinking about it, if you can share any of that information or your thoughts there.
I don't have a lot to offer to that, Bill. Unfortunately, I mean, this is still a very quickly evolving process for us internally, and one that involves multiple different groups, from transmission all the way down to the folks who run the programs, like the one that we're here to talk about today. We're still evaluating internally the evaluation rubric we will use to assess the various solutions that we will get from the market, as well as the ones that we're evaluating from internally. I think what you're asking is really how would we evaluate cost effectiveness of traditional solutions with market-based solutions. I don't have something to offer on that right now. We're still thinking through that. There will be some description of that in the RFI that will come out, because we'll be asking for some information to help us do that assessment. But unfortunately, I don't have that on hand to share right now.
No, that's understandable, Demetrius, and I would say, and I'll second Aaron's point, that we have an opportunity to very rapidly address some of those needs through demand response and energy storage. If you look at the sort of procurement levels of distributed energy storage, they're coming awfully close to getting near the numbers that are the shortfall in the STAR report. So it's really an interesting set of opportunities if the right structures are put in place to address them. But that's going to require some changes to the structures, as you guys well know, and we definitely are very eager to work with you on that.
Yeah, wonderful.
Aaron, you have a question on the BCAs?
Yeah, so we work, as do other CSPs, in PJM and other regions, and while the wholesale programs are pretty well advanced, New York has the most, I would say, advanced and profitable, for that matter, retail programs, utility programs. And so, we've been pretty active in trying to proselytize these programs in other states. But one of the things that's sort of become problematic is that the benefit cost analyses are either, well, if they're filed, and I assume they are, it's under seal, and there's either nothing available or it's not particularly useful. And I'm just wondering, forget other states, I think even within New York, it would be useful if either, on a utility basis across programs, or on a programmatic basis, or across all the programs, obviously the more detailed, the better. It would be good if those numbers were available. Like if you could say that Con Edison has saved, 500 megawatts, and at a benefit cost ratio of 2 to 1, whatever it is. Yeah, that I think is an impressive thing when you're describing it to somebody else. And sort of where are we with that? And didn't it used to be public, and then it kind of went away?
Rob, do you want to take this, or do you want me to chime in on behalf of Con Ed?
Yeah, I can kind of speak to that. Aaron, you'll notice that the BCA information for those utilities that don't have any active term and auto DLM program participants are typically more available than utilities that do have participation in those programs. And essentially, because the term and auto DLM programs are procured with either some combination of fixed price or individually set contract requests, it kind of creates a BCA information issue where having the BCA information for the programs at large could create some undesired like pricing power on the part of term and auto DLM bidders. So that's essentially why the BCA information for the CSRP and DLRP and more broadly our commercial programs in general are redacted in the public version of the file of the annual report. And basically the most we can really say without providing some level of bid pricing power on those is essentially making a statement of whether or not the programs ran cost effectively or not cost effectively for the past year. So that's, I think this is something where we would really like to find some, better middle ground than that, if at all possible, sometime in the future. But we've just kind of had to accept that curtailing of detailed information for public consumption because of that feature or bug of the market-based solicitations. I will say, though, that we as staff are happy to talk to other regulatory bodies, and we can give them our assurances and feedback on how we think the programs are operating and why they should use New York as a good model as well, because I do truly believe that we've over the past decade set up some really excellent demand response products beneficial for New York State and its customers. So.
Yeah, if we could do even if we could do something along the lines of across all of New York's utilities, the commercial system relief programs have shown a cost benefit ratio of between X and Y. Like that doesn't seem like it gives people much information that they could use to exploit their offers in term and auto DLM, but it could still be useful. Obviously, if you could do it, by program or if, by utility, it would be better, but something, because right now there really isn't much of anything that other than we assume that these programs all have benefit cost ratios greater than 1.
Yeah, I think we're interested in any kind of good ideas like that. I think it's something that we would want to talk over with utilities and other stakeholders before we move forward on something like that. But that does seem like a innovative solution and something that at least right off the cuff does not strike me as something that it seems like a reasonable framework to to me, though. The things that I don't know are always what scare me the most.
Yeah. All right, well, maybe we'll put it in our comments in this docket. Thanks.
Bill Acker, I see a hand up from you.
Sorry, that was legacy. Oh, I'm done. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, I think we've hit our backlog for unanswered questions. If we haven't answered your question yet, please do feel free to raise a hand. Just come off of mute and ask it. We've got another 15 minutes left of scheduled time. And we'll give it a minute, a quick 1, 2, 3 to give folks time to do that. And if not, we will bid everybody a good afternoon. So going once, going twice. All right. Thanks, everyone. I think we had a really productive conversation today, and we look forward to hearing everybody's comments and feedback through our comment process, and hope to have another good demand response year coming up for 2026.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.